Good morning, comic fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your no shorty. Going to take a look at Black Diamond today, and this is one of those books from Panic Entertainment, which is a company I've been aware of for. I've had some of their stuff in before. The last one that I tried to get through didn't really work for me. It's like a riffing on Pokemon thing, and I never really got into Pokemon much, if at all. As a kid, I was aware of it. Growing up in a shop that sells this kind of thing, I have to be aware of its existence. But even when there was, I want to say Kieran Gillen doing something in an Avatar book, it did feel like, I can kind of see what they're going for here, and because I'm culturally aware of the concept of Pokemon, cool. But when these guys did it, I was like, yeah, it's just another one, it's not really for me. So I was waiting for something to land, and this one was it, because based on the cover and a little bit of what I knew of the story, I was expecting some kind of variation on cult horror, and I'm like, yeah, I can kind of get behind that. There's a folk horror element to it as well, which is far more my cup of tea, and I'm like, right, okay, let's go, let's give it a shot. And I was very happy with what I saw, especially because pretty much the only other reason I was picking it up was I recognised one name on the creator on the cover, and that's Lee Loveridge, who's an absolutely brilliant colourist. But excuse me, in this particular case, it's probably one of the easiest jobs he's ever done. Mostly they just use off-whites, blues and greys, very, very lightly done, to get this idea of it being an open expanse where a whole bunch of very terrible things can happen. Even when they're in resort kind of spaces where there's people around, that lack of colour, that lack of depth, I think really adds something to the starkness of the quality. There is moments where you do get extra colours as well, when the main character, the absolute terrible father, realises he's left some of his son's luggage behind, has to buy him a new puffer thing for going skiing because it's pretty cold out there, and they only can afford and find in the kid's size is a colour that the kid himself refers to as a gold jacket, which is like a plot device for later on, and we do get to see that little splash of colour then to kind of highlight that this is an important thing. It's kind of Route 1, but it works. And in terms of the rest of the artwork, mostly the artists are unchallenged too much. This is a very simple start of an issue where most of what we get is conversations. These are about skiing, or what people are skiing, or phone calls with ex-wives or ski instructors. It's an awful lot of talking. And it's done effectively. There's some quite nice non-verbal communication, the way people are standing, the terrible father trying to be all intimidating to a guy who could probably break him in half without even breaking a sweat. But then we do get two particular moments which highlight these are the right people for the job. These artists, although not challenged for the most of it, when they are challenged, step up to it with style and aplomb. When we see, excuse me, I'm my throat there. When we see the thing that was on the cover, the thing that made me think, oh, this is a folk horror kind of thing, in the flesh, as it were, it is a terrifying moment. It is huge, it's intimidating, imposing, and it comes across as exactly the way it should do for this. It is almost otherworldly, but still very grounded in its way. It's a scale slightly too big, but not so big as to be absolutely inhuman. Very nice choices made there. And then we also have this moment, one of the few action sequences, it isn't just people skiing, where there's just a sudden explosion of brutal violence, and it is done brilliantly. It could have been tawdry. It could have spent far longer focusing on the acts or the repercussions of the violence. Instead, we get it from a slightly different point of view. We're seeing the person doing the violence, but not what the violence actually is. The pacing of it is brilliant. It stays, excuse me, just long enough to feel like relentless levels of violence without necessarily focusing on how brutal it is or overstaying its welcome. Very nicely done. Brilliant use of space and fantastic paneling to make everything come across brilliantly for you. But it's a story which is the more important thing for me. I do think that while it does have folk horror and cult horror elements, it doesn't go so far as to not be something you wouldn't expect to see on, I don't know, an episode of Criminal Minds. It's not too far out of the ordinary, but with just enough interesting things to make it stand out. Like one of those good kind of unusual episodes where it isn't just somebody doing a sex crime or whatever. But it is still very, very dark. It is the kind of thing which I would say might make some people uncomfortable. I'm not going to get into trigger warnings when I'm doing videos talking out loud, because that's the kind of thing which people notice. But it's certainly worth paying attention to what's going on and what the setup is. Might not be for everyone. It did work for me enough that I want to see what happens next. Not blow me away, because the Criminal Minds kind of way of storytelling is not something I particularly enjoy. My partner is very, very into it, and I sit there in the same room as her watching it, mostly just reading a book, so I got something else to do. But those cult and folk horror elements are enough to make it more interesting to me, and it does look good, so who knows, it could end up being absolutely brilliant. It certainly has potential, and if that's what you're after, could work for you. That's it for you for now, though. Till I'll see you all again. Look after you, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!